So I've decided to quit procrastinating and get back into more of a regular schedule documenting my build. If you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome. Thanks for checking this out. You'll see that I have a lot of content going back quite a few years. Shortly after I started my YouTube journey, doing everything on the car, life got really hectic really quick, and yeah, it just kind of fell to the wayside, and I had a few false starts, but we're gonna get back to it. And we're going to document everything from basically where we are now. I do want to make another video going more over in detail on the status of the TT. It's been largely the same since probably one of my last videos, except for I've put an incredible amount of miles on it. I still daily drive it, but we're now sitting at somewhere around like 233,000 miles on the car, and it's been largely neglected aside from your basic maintenance. So all that to say, there's a lot of work that I gotta do to this thing, and there's a few goals and things that I wanna do with the car. But before we dive in too deep into that, let's start at step one and get things kind of taken care of. So where we're gonna start today is doing a battery relocation on this thing. I don't think I really documented it before. I may have, it's been a long time. But effectively, when I built the car, I moved everything to the rear in terms of the battery, and it was a temporary situation. That temporary situation turned into a very long-term permanent one, and it was never meant to stay back there. So now we're going to move the battery into an actual permanent home, get something a little bit more robust, and yeah, so that's where we're gonna start. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of positive cable still, and I think under the seat I've got a little extra going there. And then my ground cable, I don't consider this the most adequate thing. It's been working, and it's been working fine enough, but yeah, I really need to redo that. So let's get started by taking the interior apart. We're gonna need to take both the front and the rear seats out. We'll also remove the center console so we have a pathway to run our cables from front to back. And we'll remove the dash so that we can get access to the pass-through into the engine bay. This back seat should be relatively easy. I'm gonna remove these bits here after, but first let's take out the bench seat portion. You'll see where the cable kind of comes out of from there. Look at all that room for activities. So, seats are out of the way. I need to clean this whole thing up. It's absolutely filthy in here. Honestly, I haven't taken the seats out in a very, very long time, so I'm surprised that's it. But you can see the carpet's pretty much, it's just filthy. I mean, that's really all there is to say about it. So now with under the dash removed, let me get a light down here. Truth be told, it's not absolutely awful. I just have two controllers down here that really have quite a bit of cabling that came with it, and almost an unnecessary amount, but I suppose that leaves freedom for putting it wherever. So I've got this massive bundle of wires right here. That goes to this controller right here. This controller is for my air fuel ratio gauge right here. So that is a standalone O2 sensor. And then that gives me a standalone air-fuel ratio reading, independent of anything else the car is doing. So that way I know that it's accurate because it's just reading on its own. And then this one right here, this is for the boost gauge, pretty self-explanatory here. This is the vacuum line. But anyway, so I've got these cabling again, a bunch of wire that came with. I didn't trim anything down. I just kind of zip tied everything together, tried to bundle it up and stuffed it in there. So I'm going to remove, if I can get a good look here at the, so that's the factory relay, I guess, termination point to the car. So you can see all my connections are terminating to the standard fuse junction there. So I think I'm going to split out of that one, and then each connection's going to get their own stud rather than all the studs kind of sharing, or all the connections sharing the same stud. But anyway, from here you can see I've also got the battery cable that kind of intertwines, goes in there underneath the carpet, goes up and over and then behind into what ends up being right here, where we'll start running our cabling down through here, over, and then we'll go ahead and remove it, and then we'll go ahead and clean it up. It should really open this space up quite a bit, especially pulling this relay box out. So before I go any further, I need to show you 24-year-old me. So I did a few wire deletes or sensor deletes, and to simplify the harness going through here and obviously all the sensors that no longer exist, I bundled them up, terminated them, and then made a giant wad of cables here that I completely forgot I tucked in over there. This one's also worth pointing out. Again, 24-year-old me used a pair of self-tappers, so that is what fixed the relay box onto here. And I completely forgot I had a fused adapter here for my fuel pump. So yeah, so I believe this is going over to the positive connection over here. That's where we're getting power from, and then making its way around. So yeah, like I said, quite a bit of work. All right, so here is the cable I pulled out. So as you can tell, it's a bit of a mess, but also one of the nicer things that I'm kind of looking forward to is the quality of the core. So as you can tell on here, the strands are, I mean, they're small, but relatively thick, I guess, for the gauge. It's a 2-gauge wire. And the new one that we got, that we'll be putting on, so as you can see, considerably finer than the one I had in the car. And we've got plenty of new copper connectors that I'll be making, so we'll actually, I purchased a proper tool to actually crimp these. So I'll make a new one, and originally the plan was to put the battery, it back here, in between that area there. However, the bottom of the battery, after I took it out, I measured it real quick. It's about 1/2 inch to 1 inch too wide, so it's not going to sit back there. But I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a bracket, and that bracket's going to go right there. Unlike my previous setup, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run both my ground and my power parallel from the back to the front, and then we're just going to come down here. The positive cable is going to go straight to the starter as it normally does, nothing changes there. The ground is going to then go back into the bolt on the transmission, which obviously also goes straight into the block. And then I'm going to run a secondary cable that's going to go on the transmission, and then we're going to ground it on the chassis up here, similar to how I previously had it with my other ground. I'm going to run from the battery another ground over here. So we're effectively going to have 3 grounds. That should really help. The amount of gremlins that you're gonna find just from having a bad ground is pretty incredible. So let's make our cables. So the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna run the cable from back here into the engine bay. We're gonna get like a rough estimate on length, and then we'll go ahead and cut the sheath to roughly that size, maybe a little extra, just so we can accommodate here for bends and, you know, going into the nooks and crannies. Let's do it the smart way. All right, well, it turns out that the length of battery cable is almost exactly what I need for a test fit, and will only trim off just a hair. So I think we should be okay to just run this sheath straight through both of them and not have to trim anything. So I'm overall pretty happy with how these turned out. We'll go ahead and take care of these zip ties here. I primarily just put them on so then the cable didn't get lost inside the sheath while I was, you know, running it through. Once I take the zip ties off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset them a little bit so then when they go on the battery, I kind of want to run it really tight. So I want my lengths to kind of be as close to exact as we can get. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then once we get that situated, I'll worry about this end. We'll go ahead and cut these off, and then we'll burn off the ends to fray them, tighten them up a little bit, and then we'll put the heat shrink on top. This is also a bit of a nicer tool. You don't need one as nice as this, but I decided to splurge so I can, you know, make some really nice crimps. So we're going to use this thing. It's really cool. It's a hydraulic crimper, which might seem a little overkill, but for a battery cable, this will get you a near solid connection. It'll compress the copper fibers in there so much that it'll quite literally crush them into a solid piece of copper. So it'll give you a really, really nice connection. It's got these really cool dies, plenty of different sizes. So really, really solid tool. I'm really excited to actually use this for the first time, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get pretty good life out of it. So with the cable offset and the terminal crimp on, we'll go ahead and start crimping. And that right there gives us a really, really solid connection. I don't know that I need it to squeeze that much, but you know what? It'll be fine. We're going to put heat shrink on top of it anyway. Now that the lengths are correct and they're sitting in the back of the car just like I need them to, we've got them running alongside the tunnel, under the dash, and then into the engine bay. So now with the rear end taken care of and the front looking just the same, I have one thing I need to take care of before we start buttoning things up. So back when I got my hands on the high pressure fuel pump, I actually got it secondhand. Most of this was more or less put together, so what I ended up doing was just adapting what was there to my particular setup. I'd consider this a tragedy, primarily ignorance, but still learning. So this is what I came up with, so we're getting rid of this, and this time around we're going to spend a little bit more time doing things the right way, or at least the way that I would consider the right way. This is our new setup. We are using a relay and an actual socket instead of plugging in directly to the relay. So this allows me, if we have a failed relay or anything like that, quick swap. Taking the fuse socket that was in the original one and I spliced it into this new one. We have fused power and the prime positive. Prime positive, effectively, as soon as you open the door, you get about 2 seconds of priming, and then once the ignition is on, it'll go ahead and give continuous power. So this will no longer live in the engine bay. So that'll clean it up, it'll look real nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this real quick, and then we'll move on to the last and final piece that I really wanna show you guys. I'm pretty excited about it, I've made it myself, but let's go ahead and install this real quick, and then we'll move on to that. So here it is, this is what I made. I whipped up CAD. I really wanted to have a chassis mounted battery Like I said, we were originally going to put it back there, but battery just didn't fit, and this is, yeah, this is what I came up with. So I would consider this my prototype. A smarter me wouldn't have made this out of stainless steel. I would have saved a little bit more money, but it's functional. I can use it. One revision I would like to make is, as you can see, there's quite a bit of room between the back of the bracket and the chassis. I'll get you another angle. Because I utilized the dimensions of the base plate for the top plate, I knew I was going to have a little bit of room to consume, or that I wanted to consume, but I didn't want to play around with it because I wasn't exactly sure how much room I was going to have, so I didn't want to accidentally overshoot and then it not fit. So it works for now. Let's go ahead and get the battery installed, finish up putting the interior together, and see if we can fire this thing up.